Hi everybody, and welcome to I Like Cruise Ships, the YouTube channel, and welcome to a new video, and welcome to another video in our question and answer series or playlist. This is another video with a question that I'm answering from social media, from one of the Carnival Cruise Talks CCT groups, where someone's asked about do you need a passport to travel to Grand Turk? Now, of course, you've seen that in the title, and here is my answer. There were 7 replies already, and I know this is a very popular question asked a lot in other cruise groups. I've actually also answered a very similar question in another Q&A video. You might have seen that already. Now, there's two different answers that I can give you. Do you need a passport to travel to Grand Turks? Now, the answer is kind of yes and no. Now, if, of course, in the cruise group, it's assuming that they're going to cruise there. Now, to get off the ship in the port, you don't necessarily need a passport to get off the ship. You would need your room key, sea pass, sail and sign card to walk off the pier, to be able to get on and off the ship through security. Then to reboard the ship going back through the security of the cruise terminal, they're going to ask you for a government-issued photo ID. Now, very typically, of course, if you've got your passport, that's perfect. Maybe a driver's license, some sort of government-issued ID that's got a photo on it. You could use that as proof. Some people even have birth certificates that are kind of made with photos on. This is basically the port security is asking for that to prove that basically the card that you're presenting, the sail and sign card, matches your own ID, that you've not necessarily sold that card to somebody else to board the ship, and so on. So, do you need a passport? Now, it's your choice. At the moment, sailing in and out of the US on what's called closed loop cruises, where you start and end the cruise in the US, it's not a requirement to have a passport. It's encouraged. Now, getting off in the ports of call as well, it's encouraged that you take your passport. Really, it's kind of a bit of a 50-50 kind of answer. I would tell you that you don't need to take your passport off the ship if you were going to get off in Grand Turk and say go to the beach. The island is 7 miles by 2 miles. It's not a very big island to get lost on or to go missing, so to speak. Effectively, if you were to get off the ship with your passport, you can use that as ID to get back on. Let's say, hypothetically, the ship sailed and left you behind. You are in a foreign country. Turks and Caicos is a British overseas territory. And to be able to leave the country, you'd need to go through customs and immigration to fly back to America. So you'd need to basically travel internationally to return back to the US. If you're on the cruise, effectively, you don't need a passport to enter the country. The ship arrives, the ship is cleared by customs and immigration under kind of like a blanket visa, which effectively lets all the guests off the ship into the port or onto the island, and then get back on the ship without needing to be having anything stamped or checked. If they were to check, 3 or 4 or 5,000 guests, you would have no time to get off in the port of call. So the immigration and officials board the ship when the ship arrives, when I arrive, and then they basically clear the ship to allow guests to disembark into that foreign country or onto that island of Grand Turk. Now, just to look at it a little bit differently, if you were to fly to Turks and Caicos from the US, of course, you're then going to a British island. You would need a passport to enter the country. And then depending on which passport you hold, you may need a visa, depending on the country's agreements. So that's not really kind of the question asked in a cruise group, but should you take your passport off the ship? I've made another video, you can watch that right afterwards, about should you take that off the ship with you. There is a lot of people who say that you should take your passport. You never know what's going to happen. You may get stuck. You may have to go to hospital. You may have to, I don't know, you might decide to marry a local and live there and never go back to the ship. And then you've got your passport as your proof of identity. For me, I would tell you to leave it on the ship in your cabin safe, or maybe in your top dresser drawer in your cabin. If anything was to happen, the ship security would come to your room with a member from guest services, and they would actually source your ID documents and bring them to the gangway, leave them with the ship's port agent, and then when you may return to the gangway looking for the ship or return to the pier, there'll be somebody there to give it back to you for you then to figure out how to get home. So a little bit of a longer answer. I hope this kind of makes a little bit of sense in how I'm explaining it. So Sherry Renee Johnson is the person who did this comment, and I'm sure by now there's 70 comments in this post, and everybody has a different opinion. I would tell you that you don't need to have your passport to get off. I tell you to leave it in your safe. In terms of having government issued photo ID, I would assume, barring kids and things like that, everybody would have a driver's license. Take your driver's license, take your sail and sign card or ship card, C-Pass, whatever you're calling it, as your proof of ID for the port security to reboard through onto the pier and onto the ship. If you know what Grand Turk's like, it's a very basic kind of place. You pass a port security to come back on board, then you board the ship at the gangway and then use your ship card then into the machine to then go inside the ship. So yeah, thanks Sherry for the question. Longer answer as usual, but that's the whole point of these Q&As. I hope it's helpful for you. Thanks everybody for watching I Like Cruise Ships, the YouTube channel's Q&A series, and we'll see you in a new video. If you like this one, give it a like, give it a thumbs up, subscribe. Catch you later. Bye.